Hello! We're excited to show you our native speech capabilities. Welcome back to the English journey. Today, we are going to change the way you wake up. I'm Anna.
And I'm Abel. If you want to speak English fluently, you don't need 5 hours of study. You just need a better morning. Let's show you how.
That is absolutely right, Abel. And I want to start by asking everyone who is listening or watching right now a very simple question. What is the very first thing you do when you wake up in the morning? Think about it honestly. Do you reach for your phone? Do you scroll through social media? Do you check your messages? If the answer is yes, do not worry because you are definitely not alone. Most people do exactly the same thing. But here is what we want to show you today. Those first 60 minutes of your morning are actually the most powerful, most valuable minutes of the entire day for learning English. And right now, most people are wasting them.
I was absolutely one of those people, Anna. I am not embarrassed to say it. Every single morning for about 2 years, the very first thing I did was pick up my phone. I would check my social media, look at videos, read comments, and before I even got out of bed, 30 minutes had already passed. 30 minutes! And I was not using any of that time in English. I was reading and scrolling in my native language every day, every single morning. And then I would wonder why my English was not improving as fast as I wanted. I could not understand why I felt so comfortable speaking my native language, but so nervous and slow when I tried to speak English.
And this is something that so many of our students and listeners experience. They study English in the evenings, they watch English videos on the weekend, but then every single morning they start their day in their native language. And what happens is that your brain, which is an incredible and very powerful machine, gets a very clear message. The message is that your native language is the language of your daily life. English is something you do later, something you do sometimes, something you do when you have extra time. And your brain starts to treat English as less important, less natural, less automatic.
And that is exactly what I felt. English felt like extra work. It felt like something I had to think very hard about. And the funny thing is, the reason it felt that way was not because English is difficult. It was because of my habits. It was because of what I was doing every morning without even thinking about it.
So, we want to talk today about something we call the golden hour. This is the first 60 minutes after you wake up. And the reason we call it the golden hour is because your brain is in a very special state during this time. When you first wake up, your brain is moving from a sleeping state to a fully awake and active state. During this transition, your mind is very open. It is very receptive, which means it is ready and willing to receive new information. It is ready to absorb, to process, and to hold on to new ideas and new language. Scientists who study the brain have found that the information and the habits that you engage with during this morning window have a much stronger effect on your brain than information you receive later in the day, when your mind is busy, tired, and full of other thoughts.
So basically, what you do first in the morning sets the tone for everything else. It's like the first page of a book. It tells your brain what story you are living today. And if you can tell your brain every single morning that today is an English day, today we think in English, today we communicate in English, your brain will slowly, gradually, but very powerfully begin to accept that is normal. And once something feels normal, it stops feeling difficult.
Exactly. And that is the goal we have for all of you today. We want English to feel normal for you. We want you to get used to starting your day in English so that English stops being something you do and starts being something you are. There's a big difference between those two things. Something you do requires effort and motivation every single time. Something you are is just a part of who you are. It's automatic, it's natural, and it starts in the morning.
So let us talk about the very first and maybe the most important step in building this kind of morning. And honestly, when Anna first told me about this, I thought she was a little bit crazy. She told me to put my phone down, not just for a few minutes. She told me to keep my phone away from me for the first 30 minutes of every morning. No social media, no messages, no news, no videos, nothing.
And I called this the digital detox. Now, a detox usually means cleaning your body of something unhealthy. A digital detox means giving your brain a break from the constant stream of digital information. And the reason this is so important for English learners specifically is something that many people don't think about. When you wake up and immediately start scrolling through your social media, you are not just wasting time, you are actually doing something quite damaging to your English learning progress. Because here's what happens. Your social media is almost certainly in your native language. The posts, the comments, the videos, the jokes, the news, all of it is filling your brain with your native language first thing in the morning. And this is what we could call a language reset.
I love that phrase, a language reset, because that's exactly what it feels like. Imagine your brain is like a radio, and during the night, while you sleep, the radio is quiet and ready to be tuned to any station you choose. But the moment you pick up your phone in the morning and start scrolling in your native language, you have tuned that radio very strongly to your native language station. And then when you sit down later to study English or to have a conversation in English, you have to work very hard to change the station. Your brain is already comfortable and settled in your native language. Switching to English takes real effort. It takes time. And many students find that for the first 10 or 15 minutes of any English study session, they feel slow, they feel hesitant, and they feel like their English is not as good as it actually is.
But instead of reaching for your phone, you simply leave it face down, or even better, in another room, and you start your morning quietly. You give your brain the opportunity to wake up gently without being immediately pulled into your native language. And then, as you start your morning routine, your shower, your breakfast, your morning preparation, you can begin to fill that quiet mental space with English. And because your brain hasn't already been tuned to your native language, absorbing English in the morning feels much easier, much more natural.
I remember the first week I tried this. It was genuinely difficult. I'm not going to pretend it was easy. I kept reaching for my phone automatically, like a reflex. My hand would just move toward it, and I would have to stop myself and remind myself why I was doing this. But by the second week, something started to change. I started to feel calmer in the mornings, and I started to notice that when I spoke English later in the day, the words came a little easier, the sentences formed a little quicker. And I realized that what I was doing was protecting my brain's natural morning openness and using it for English instead of wasting it on social media.
And this is where we introduce the next step. Now that you've protected your morning brain from the digital noise, you can begin to use it actively for English. And the first technique Abel is going to share with you is one of my favorites. Abel, can you tell everyone about what you do in the shower?
Yes, and I love this one because it sounds a little bit silly at first, but it's actually incredibly effective. So every morning when I get into the shower, instead of just standing there thinking about nothing or thinking about my problems or thinking in my native language about what I need to do today, I started doing something different. I started talking to myself in English, out loud, in the shower. I call it my 5-minute narrative, which just means I tell myself a little story about my day in English.
And a narrative is simply a story or an account of events. So Abel is telling himself the story of his upcoming day in English every morning.
Exactly. So it sounds something like this. I might say something like, "Okay, Abel, today is Tuesday. I have a meeting at 10 o'clock this morning, so I need to prepare my notes before I leave. After work, I want to go to the gym, but only if I finish my report by 5. Tonight, I'm going to cook pasta for dinner and practice my English for 30 minutes. Very simple sentences, very everyday language, nothing complicated. But the act of forming these sentences out loud in English about real things that are actually happening in my life is extremely powerful for building fluency.
And the reason this works so well connects to a concept in language learning that we want to explain simply. When you talk to yourself in English about your real plans, your real feelings, your real gay, you are not translating from your native language. You are thinking in English directly. And thinking in English directly without the step of translating is the true definition of fluency.
Most language learners spend years translating in their heads before speaking.
I think of the word in my language, I translate it to English, then I say it. This process is slow, and it makes speaking feel very difficult. But when you practice thinking directly in English, even about simple everyday things, you are training your brain to skip the translation step.
And the shower is a perfect place to do this because you are already alone. Nobody can hear you. There is no pressure, there is no judgment. You can speak slowly, make mistakes, repeat yourself, try again, and nobody cares. It is a completely safe space to practice your spoken English.
And I found that over time, these 5 minutes every morning began to have a real impact on how comfortable I felt speaking English with other people. Because I was already warmed up. My mouth, my mind, my voice, they were already in English mode by the time I started my day.
I love that idea of warming up. Just like an athlete warms up their muscles before a race, you are warming up your English brain before your English day. And this leads us beautifully into our next topic, which is the difference between input and output in language learning, and why you need both of them every single morning. Let me explain these two words simply. Input is when language goes into your brain. When you listen to a podcast like this one, you are receiving input. You are absorbing language, vocabulary, grammar patterns, and pronunciation. When you read a book in English, that is also input. Input is passive, in the sense that you are receiving, you are taking in.
And output is when language comes out of your brain. When you speak in the shower, that is output. When you write a sentence in a journal, that is output. Output is active. You are producing language. You are creating sentences. You are expressing your own thoughts in English. Now, here's the important point that many learners miss. You need both. Some students spend all their time on input. They listen to podcasts, they watch English television, they read articles, and they think that eventually they will just naturally start speaking. But without practice producing the language themselves, the output often does not come as naturally as they hope. And then other students focus only on output. They try to speak and write all the time, but they do not listen or read enough, so they run out of new vocabulary and new structures to use. The secret is balance. In the morning gives you a perfect opportunity to get both input and output in a very short amount of time.
So, what does this look like in practice? Anna has a beautiful, simple system that I have also started using. Tell them about the coffee method, Anna. Yes, I love this. So while I'm making my coffee or my breakfast in the morning, I press play on an English podcast. It might be this podcast, it might be another slow English podcast, a news podcast, or an English conversation show, something at my level or just slightly above my level. And I simply listen while I do my morning preparation. I'm not sitting at a desk studying. I'm not writing notes. I'm just letting the English wash over me while I do something I would be doing anyway. This is input, beautiful, effortless input. And doing it in the morning means my brain, which is still fresh and receptive from the night's sleep, absorbs it very effectively.
And the output part?
The output part is very simple and takes only 2 or 3 minutes. After I have finished making my coffee and I sit down at the table, I open a small notebook that I keep on my kitchen table, and I write 1 or 2 sentences in English about anything. It might be about what I heard on the podcast. It might be about how I'm feeling today. It might be about what the weather is like or what I'm going to do later. Just 1 or 2 sentences in English, handwritten in a small journal. And this simple act of writing forces my brain to take the English I've been absorbing through listening and to organize it, to produce it, to express it. It connects the input to the output. And doing this every single morning consistently is one of the most powerful things I have ever done for my English writing and speaking ability.
And consistency is such an important word here. It's not about doing something perfectly one time. It's about doing something regularly, even imperfectly, over a long period of time. 2 sentences every morning for a year is far more powerful than writing 10 pages once a month. The brain loves consistency. It loves patterns. And when you give your brain a consistent morning English routine, it begins to build something very powerful. It builds what scientists call a habit loop, which is when a behavior becomes so automatic that you do it without thinking, like brushing your teeth. You do not have to motivate yourself to brush your teeth every morning. You just do it. And that is exactly what we want your English morning routine to become.
Now let's move to something that I know many of you are going to find very useful, especially if you struggle with English pronunciation. We call this the mirror technique, and you can practice it right in your bathroom mirror every morning. The idea is beautifully simple. When you're brushing your teeth or washing your face, you are already standing in front of a mirror. You are already looking at your own face. So instead of just staring blankly at yourself, use that time to practice the physical movements of English pronunciation.
And this sounds a little bit funny at first, I know. When Anna told me about this, I actually laughed. I thought, you want me to make faces at myself in the mirror? And she said, yes, exactly. Because pronunciation is not just about sound, it's about the position of your lips, your teeth, your tongue, and the shape of your mouth. And many sounds in English require mouth movements that simply don't exist in other languages. So unless you look at what your mouth is doing, you cannot know if you are making the right shapes.
Think about the sound at the beginning of the word think, or the word the. This is the sound that many English learners struggle with. In many languages, this sound does not exist at all. And the reason people find it difficult is not because it is complicated. It is because your tongue needs to touch the back of your upper teeth, and your tongue needs to be slightly visible between your teeth as you make the sound. If you stand in front of a mirror and watch yourself try to make this sound, you can immediately see whether your tongue is in the right position or not. You can see it. You can correct it, you can practice it over and over while you are doing your morning bathroom routine, and nobody needs to know.
I spent about 2 weeks practicing the sounds that were most difficult for me in front of my mirror every morning. My flatmate thought I was a little bit strange, I think, because sometimes he would walk past the bathroom and hear me saying words to myself very slowly and carefully. But the improvement in my pronunciation was genuinely noticeable. People started asking me if I had been practicing more, if I had been traveling to an English-speaking country, and I had not. I had just been standing in front of my mirror every morning making shapes with my mouth. It really works.
And the beautiful thing about the mirror technique is that it trains what we could call your muscle memory. Your tongue, your lips, and your jaw are all controlled by muscles. And just like the muscles in your arms or your legs, they can be trained to move in specific ways. When you practice the physical movements of English sounds over and over, those movements become automatic. Your mouth begins to know where to go without you having to think about it consciously. And when speaking English becomes physically automatic, it becomes much faster and much more natural.
So, by this point in our perfect English morning, we have already done the digital detox to protect our brain, we have done our 5-minute narrative in the shower to warm up our spoken English, we have listened to a podcast during breakfast for input, we have written 1 or 2 sentences in our journal for output, and we have practiced our pronunciation in the mirror. And all of this has taken maybe 25 to 30 minutes, not 5 hours, not 3 hours, 25 minutes, while doing things we would be doing anyway.
And we are not finished yet, because now it is time for breakfast. And breakfast is actually a perfect time for what we call flashcard breakfast. This is a technique that uses something called spaced repetition to help you remember new vocabulary much more effectively. Let me explain what spaced repetition means in simple English. When you learn a new word, your brain puts it in a kind of short-term storage. If you do not see or use that word again for a long time, your brain slowly forgets it. But if you see that word again a short time later, and then again a little bit later, and then again after a slightly longer time, your brain decides that this must be an important word and moves it into long-term storage. This process of seeing a word at carefully timed intervals is called spaced repetition, and it is one of the most scientifically proven ways to memorize vocabulary permanently.
There are several wonderful apps on your phone that use spaced repetition automatically. You do not have to calculate the timing yourself. You just use the app every day and it shows you words at exactly the right moment to keep them in your long-term memory. Some popular ones include Anki and Quizlet, and there are others as well. You can find whichever one works best for you.
So, the flashcard breakfast technique is exactly what it sounds like. While you're eating your breakfast, instead of reaching for your phone to scroll social media, you open your spaced repetition app and you go through your flashcards for 5 minutes. Just 5 minutes. You see a word, you think about the meaning, you try to remember, and then you check if you were right. And the app automatically schedules when to show you each word again based on how well you remembered it. It's almost like having a personal vocabulary trainer in your pocket who knows exactly which words you need to review today.
And I want to mention something that I think is really important about this technique, which connects to another idea called active recall. Active recall is when you try to remember information from your memory rather than just reading it again. So instead of looking at a flashcard that says the word in English and immediately showing you the meaning, active recall means you see the word, you close your eyes or you look away, and you try to remember the meaning yourself before looking at the answer. This extra effort of trying to remember, even when it is difficult, is what actually makes the memory stronger. It's like exercise for your memory. The harder your brain has to remember something, the better it remembers it.
And you do not need to spend a long time on this. 5 minutes of focused, active flashcard review during breakfast is far more effective than 30 minutes of passive reading. Quality over quantity, active effort over passive exposure. This is the principle that makes all of these morning techniques so powerful. Each one is short, focused, and requires your brain to be actively engaged. And because they're short, you can do them all without feeling overwhelmed or exhausted. You can make real progress without turning your morning into a stressful study session.
And there is one final section of the morning that we want to talk about, which is the commute. Now, not everyone commutes in the same way. Some people drive to work, some people take the bus or the train, some people walk, and some people work from home and don't commute at all. But whatever your situation, you probably have some travel time in your morning, even if it's just a short walk to a coffee shop or a 10-minute drive to the office. And this time is an absolute goldmine for English immersion.
Immersion is a word that means surrounding yourself completely with something. When we talk about language immersion, we mean creating an environment where you are surrounded by English from every direction. The ideal immersion experience is living in an English-speaking country where you hear and speak English all day, every day. But most of our listeners do not live in an English-speaking country, so we have to create our own immersion environments, and the commute is one of the best places to do this.
So here's the rule that I started following, and that made a big difference for me. During my morning commute, I enter what I call my English-only zone. This means that for the entire duration of my commute, everything I consume, everything I listen to, everything I read, everything I engage with is in English. If I'm on the bus, I have my headphones in and I'm listening to an English podcast or an English audiobook or an English radio station. If I'm driving, I have an English podcast or English talk radio playing in the car instead of music in my native language.
And if you walk to work or school, walking is actually one of the best times to practice your spoken English because you can walk and talk at the same time. You can continue your 5-minute narrative from the shower. You can review vocabulary out loud. You can practice sentences you want to use in a meeting or class that day. You can even listen to a sentence from your podcast, pause it, and try to repeat it as accurately as you can. This technique of listening and then immediately repeating what you heard is called shadowing, and it is one of the most effective techniques for improving both your pronunciation and your speaking speed.
The thing that changed for me when I started treating my commute as English immersion time was that I stopped feeling like I needed to find extra hours in my day to study English because I was already using time that I had, time that I was spending anyway. I wasn't adding English to my schedule. I was replacing the time I was already using badly with something much more useful. And that shift in thinking made everything feel much easier and much more achievable.
And this brings us to the conclusion of today's episode. We want to summarize everything we have talked about and give you a very clear picture of what your perfect morning can look like.
When your alarm goes off in the morning, the very first thing you do is leave your phone alone. Do not touch it. Do not look at it. Give yourself the gift of a native language-free morning. Let your brain wake up gently and naturally without being pulled immediately into your native language through social media and messages.
Then, when you get into the shower, you start your 5-minute narrative. You speak to yourself in English, out loud, about your plans for the day. Simple sentences, everyday language, real topics from your real life. You're warming up your English brain, training yourself to think directly in English without translating, and building the confidence that comes from hearing yourself speak English comfortably and naturally.
While you're making your coffee or your breakfast, you press play on an English podcast. You let the language flow into your ears. You're not studying, you're just absorbing. Beautiful, natural, effortless input for your morning brain. And then, when you sit down to eat, you write 1 or 2 sentences in your English journal, just 1 or 2, about anything at all. This is your output. This is your brain producing English. Together, the listening and the writing create a perfect balance of input and output that builds both your passive understanding and your active ability to use the language.
In the bathroom, in front of the mirror, you spend a few minutes practicing the English sounds that are most difficult for you. You watch your mouth, you practice the shapes, you train your muscles to make English sounds automatically and naturally. And you do this as not a formal study session, but as part of your everyday bathroom routine while you're brushing your teeth or combing your hair. At the breakfast table, for 5 minutes, you open your spaced repetition app and you review your flashcards vocabulary. You test yourself actively. You try to remember before you look at the answer. You make your memory work hard because that work is exactly what makes the memory strong. And when you finish breakfast and start your commute, you enter your English-only zone. Podcast in your ears, English on your mind, and if you're walking, perhaps even English on your lips as you practice your speaking out loud.
And the incredible thing is that everything we've just described, from the moment your alarm goes off to the moment you arrive at work or school, can happen in 60 minutes or less, the golden hour. 60 minutes that transform your relationship with English. 60 minutes that tell your brain every single day that English is important, that English is normal, that English is a natural part of your life.
And we know what some of you are thinking. You're thinking, this sounds good, but will it actually work for me? And we want to be very direct with you. Yes, it will work, but only if you are consistent, only if you do it regularly. Not perfectly, but regularly. You do not have to do every single step every single morning. Maybe some mornings you only have time for the shower narrative and the podcast listening. That is fine. That is still wonderful. The goal is not perfection. The goal is progress. And progress happens through small, consistent actions over time.
This is why we want to end today's episode with a challenge for all of you. We are calling it the 7-Day English Morning Challenge. For the next 7 days, starting tomorrow morning, we want you to try the golden hour routine. You do not have to do every step perfectly, you do not have to get everything right, but we want you to commit to 7 mornings of starting your day in English instead of in your native language. And we want you to notice how you feel at the end of those 7 days. Notice whether English feels a little more natural. Notice whether the words come a little more easily. Notice whether you feel more confident and more comfortable using English. Because we are very confident that if you do this consistently for 7 days, you will begin to see and feel a real difference. And once you see that difference, you will not want to go back.
Learning English is a journey. It is not a destination you arrive at one day and then stop. It is a path that you walk every single day. And the most important steps on that path are the small ones, the daily ones, the ones that happen in the quiet of your morning before the rest of the world is asking things of you. The golden hour is yours. Use it, protect it, fill it with English, and watch what happens.
We are so grateful to all of you for spending part of your morning with us today. And we want to hear from you. Are you going to try the 7-Day Challenge? Let us know in the comments. Tell us which part of the morning routine you are most excited to try. Tell us what your biggest challenge is with your morning routine right now. We read every comment and we love hearing from you because your journey is the reason we make this podcast.
And if today's episode was useful for you, please share it with a friend who is also learning English. The best thing you can do for someone who is on the same journey as you is to share tools and ideas that actually work. And this routine works. We know because we use it ourselves, and we see our students using it every day and making real, meaningful progress.
Remember, you do not need 5 hours. You do not need expensive courses. You do not need to move to another country. You just need a better morning. Start tomorrow. Your English fluency is waiting for you at the beginning of each new day.
Thank you so much for listening to The English Journey. We look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Until then, keep speaking, keep listening, keep writing, and keep growing. Good morning, good English, and good luck.
Good luck, everyone. We believe in you. Now go set your alarm and do not touch your phone when it goes off tomorrow morning. We will be right here waiting for you with more English. See you next time.